The laboratory was quiet except for the low hum of machines. Dr. Benjamin Cole adjusted his glasses and stared at the computer screen in front of him. Numbers scrolled past, each one more confusing than the last. He had been working on this experiment for 3 years, and tonight felt different. Something was about to happen. He could feel it in his bones. Lisa Warren sat across from him, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She was his graduate assistant, 26 years old and sharp as a knife. She had noticed the strange readings first 2 hours ago. Now they were both wearing the neural interface headsets, thin bands of metal that wrapped around their heads and connected to the equipment with thick cables. The experiment was simple in theory. They were trying to see if human thoughts could affect tiny particles at the quantum level. The double-slit apparatus sat in the center of the room, a complex arrangement of lasers and sensors that split light into individual photons. When no one was watching, the particles behaved like waves. When someone observed them, they became solid points. Benjamin wanted to know if consciousness itself was the key, but what they found was something completely different. "Benjamin, look at this," Lisa said. Her voice was tight with worry. "The particles are doing something weird. They're not following any pattern we've seen before." Benjamin rolled his chair over to her station. The screen showed a pattern that made no sense. Instead of the usual interference pattern, the particles had organized themselves into perfect geometric shapes. Circles within circles, triangles overlapping squares, spirals that seemed to pulse with a rhythm he could almost hear. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Particles don't do that on their own." "I know. But there's more." Lisa pulled up another window. "Remember those DNA sequences we thought were junk? The ones that don't code for anything?" I ran a comparison. "Benjamin, these geometric patterns match them exactly. Whatever is happening right now, it's connected to human biology somehow." Benjamin felt his heart start to race. This was bigger than measuring consciousness. This was something fundamental about what it meant to be human. He reached for the power switch, thinking they should stop the experiment and review the data carefully. But before his fingers could touch it, everything changed. The room filled with light. Not the harsh white light of the laboratory bulbs, but something else. Something that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The neural interface headsets grew warm against their skin. Benjamin felt a strange sensation, like falling and flying at the same time. His mind opened up, and for just a second he understood things he had never known before. The universe was connected in ways that physics had never described. Space and time were flexible. Reality itself could be shaped by will. Then it was over. The light vanished. The equipment started beeping warnings. Power levels were spiking, threatening to overload the entire building's electrical grid. Benjamin and Lisa ripped off the headsets and scrambled to shut everything down. But they were too late to stop what had already begun. A pulse of energy burst out from the laboratory. It passed through the walls like they weren't even there. It was invisible to the eye, silent to the ear, but it carried something important, a signal, a message encoded in the fabric of space itself. The pulse moved fast, faster than light, faster than anything in the known universe. It spread outward in all directions, touching everything it passed. The pulse reached the edge of the city in seconds. It washed over millions of people, none of them aware that something had just changed deep inside them. It passed through the atmosphere and out into space. It touched the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and kept going. Within hours, it had left the solar system entirely. Benjamin and Lisa stood in the now quiet laboratory staring at each other. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Lisa broke the silence. "What just happened?" she asked. Benjamin shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we just did something that can't be undone." They spent the rest of the night reviewing the data, trying to make sense of what they had recorded. The energy readings were off the charts. The particle behavior was unlike anything ever documented, and the neural interface data showed that both of their brain patterns had synchronized perfectly during that moment of light, creating a combined signal that was far stronger than either of them alone. As dawn broke over Riverside University, Benjamin made a decision. He picked up his phone and called the department head. This was too big to keep quiet, too important to handle alone. Within days, every major scientific organization in the world would know about the experiment. Governments would get involved. The media would turn it into a circus, but none of them knew the real truth yet. The pulse that Benjamin and Lisa had accidentally released was still traveling. It had already passed dozens of star systems, each one home to planets and possibilities. and in 3 weeks it would reach something that had been waiting a very long time. Far across the galaxy, a massive space station orbited a dying star. The Galactic Confederation had been watching Earth for thousands of years, waiting for this exact moment. When the pulse reached their sensors, alarms began to sound. Emergency meetings were called. Ambassadors from a dozen different species gathered to discuss what this meant. Ambassador Kelvin of the Vrin Collective stood before the assembled council. His scales shimmered with colors that showed his emotional state. Right now they showed concern mixed with excitement. He had studied humanity for decades, learning their languages and customs, preparing for the day when they would finally wake up. The humans have activated their genetic lock, he announced. The signal is unmistakable. The architects designed it to be recognized across any distance. We must respond immediately. An elder member of the council, a being made entirely of crystalline structures that reflected light in strange ways, spoke up. This is too soon. They are not ready. We should observe for another century at least. We don't have a century, Kelvin replied. The signal will have reached others by now. If we don't make contact first, someone else will. And not all of them will have good intentions. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to quarantine Earth immediately, preventing the humans from leaving their planet until they could be properly educated. Others argued that humanity deserved to know the truth about their origins. In the end, they voted to send an expedition. Ambassador Kelvin would lead it. They would travel to Earth and reveal everything. Back on Earth, Benjamin Cole became famous overnight. News crews camped outside his laboratory. Scientists from around the world called demanding details. The government sent people in dark suits to ask questions he couldn't answer. Everyone wanted to know what the experiment had done and what it meant for humanity. But Benjamin had a secret he kept to himself. Ever since that night in the laboratory, he had been different. Sometimes, when he focused very hard, he could make small objects move without touching them. Just a centimeter or two and it left him exhausted. But it was real. The experiment had changed him at a fundamental level. He wondered if Lisa was experiencing the same thing. He wondered if the pulse had affected everyone on Earth or just the two of them. He wondered what else might be coming, carried on that wave of energy still spreading through the galaxy. 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning, the sky above Geneva filled with ships. They appeared without warning, massive vessels that seemed to bend light around them. The world watched in shock as the aliens finally revealed themselves. Humanity was not alone in the universe. They had never been alone, and now, ready or not, they were about to learn their true place among the stars. The alien ships landed in Geneva 3 months after Benjamin's experiment. President Claire Mitchell stood in the United Nations building, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Behind her stood Benjamin Cole and Colonel Ryan Hayes, a military man who had been assigned to handle first contact. None of them knew what to expect. The doors opened. Ambassador Kelvin walked in and President Mitchell felt her breath catch. He was tall, taller than any human, with scales that shimmered in shades of green and blue. His eyes were large and golden, and when he looked at her, she felt like he could see right through to her thoughts. Behind him came others, different species, each one more strange than the last. President Mitchell, Kelvin said in perfect English. His voice was smooth and deep. Thank you for meeting with us. We have waited a long time for this day. You speak our language, she said, trying to sound calm. We have been watching your world for thousands of years, Kelvin replied. We know all your languages. We know your history, your wars, your achievements. We have been waiting for you to wake up. Benjamin stepped forward. Wake up, what does that mean? Kelvin turned to him. Dr. Cole, the man who changed everything. Your experiment 3 months ago sent out a signal, a very specific signal that we have been monitoring for. It means that humanity has reached a critical point in its development. It means you are ready to learn the truth. What truth? Colonel Hayes asked. His hand rested near his weapon, though he knew it would be useless against beings who could travel between stars. Kelvin gestured to the chairs around the conference table. Please sit. This will take some time to explain. They sat. The other aliens remained standing, silent observers to what was about to be revealed. Kelvin folded his long fingers together and began to speak. You are not from Earth, he said simply. I mean, humans are not native to this planet. You were placed here 200,000 years ago by a race called the Architects. They were the oldest and most powerful civilization the galaxy has ever known. They vanished millions of years ago. But before they left, they seeded many worlds with different species. You are one of those species. President Mitchell felt the world tilt. That's impossible. We evolved here. We have fossils, genetic evidence, everything that proves we came from this planet. You evolved here, yes, Kelvin agreed. But the architects modified your ancestors before placing them on Earth. They gave you something special, hidden deep in your DNA. Something that would only activate when you reached a certain level of technology and understanding. Dr. Cole's experiment triggered that activation. Benjamin felt cold. The geometric patterns. The DNA sequences. You're saying those were put there on purpose? Exactly. The architects gave you a gift, Dr. Cole. They gave humanity the ability to manipulate what we call probability fields. In simple terms, you can affect reality itself at the quantum level. You can change what is possible and what is not. With training, a human could heal injuries that should be fatal, move objects without touching them, or even alter the flow of time in small ways. That sounds like magic, Colonel Hayes said. It is not magic. It is physics, but physics so advanced that it appears like magic to those who don't understand it. The architects understood reality in ways that we are still trying to learn. President Mitchell leaned forward. Why? Why would they give us this power? Kelvin's scales shifted to a darker shade. We don't know. The architects left no explanation. They simply disappeared, leaving behind species like yours scattered across the galaxy. The Galactic Confederation has been monitoring all of these seeded species for millions of years, waiting to see what they would become. How many others are there? Benjamin asked. Dozens, but most never activate their genetic locks. They develop naturally, slowly, over millions of years. Only a few species trigger their awakening as you have done, and of those only one other has survived. The room went quiet. Finally, President Mitchell asked the question they were all thinking. What happened to the others? They destroyed themselves, Kelvin said quietly. The power the architects gave them was too great. They turned on each other, using their abilities for war and conquest. The last awakened species called themselves the Devourers. They nearly destroyed half the galaxy before the Confederation managed to stop them. That was 3 million years ago. And now you think we might do the same thing, Colonel Hayes said. It wasn't a question. Some members of the Confederation do think that, yes. Others believe humanity is different. That you have learned from your own history, from your own wars. This is why I am here. The Confederation has given Earth one standard galactic year to prove yourselves. You must show that you can control these new abilities, that you can integrate into galactic society peacefully. If you cannot, then we will have no choice but to quarantine your planet permanently. President Mitchell stood up. You're asking us to prove we're not monsters while giving us the power to become monsters. How is that fair? It is not fair, Kelvin admitted. But it is necessary. The architects set this path in motion long ago. We cannot change it. We can only respond to it. What if we refuse? Colonel Hayes asked. What if we choose not to develop these abilities? You cannot refuse. The activation has already begun. Even now, humans across your world are starting to change. Some will develop abilities faster than others. Some will be more powerful. You cannot stop it. You can only learn to control it. Benjamin thought about the objects he had been moving in his apartment, about the way Lisa had mentioned feeling different lately. The change was already happening. Kelvin was right. We'll help you, Kelvin continued. The Confederation will send teachers, mentors who can guide you. We will share our knowledge of how these abilities work, but ultimately the choice of what to do with them is yours. We can only watch and hope that you choose wisely. President Mitchell looked at Benjamin and Colonel Hayes. She saw the same fear in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Humanity had just learned that everything they thought they knew about themselves was wrong. They were artificial, created by beings they couldn't understand, given powers they couldn't control, and judged by aliens who had seen it all go wrong before. But they had no choice. They had to try. What do we do first? She asked. Kelvin's scales brightened slightly, showing hope. First, we establish training centers. We identify those humans who show the strongest abilities and teach them control. We monitor for any signs of aggression or misuse, and we prepare you for what is coming. What's coming? Benjamin asked. The signal your experiment sent out has reached far across the galaxy by now. Others will have detected it. Not all of them are part of the Confederation. Some are enemies we thought long dead. If they believe another architect seed species has awakened, they will come. And when they arrive, humanity will face its first real test. The meeting lasted for hours. They discussed details, made plans, signed agreements that would change the course of human history forever. When it was finally over and the aliens had left, President Mitchell stood at the window looking out over Geneva. The world had changed today. Nothing would ever be the same. Behind her, Benjamin and Colonel Hayes were already making phone calls, organizing the response. Humanity had 1 year to prove itself. 1 year to learn powers that should take lifetimes to master. 1 year before judgment came, the clock was ticking. 6 months had passed since the aliens arrived. Danny Foster stood in the training facility in Colorado, staring at the steel beam in front of him. His instructor, a tall alien named Vaylon with skin that looked like crystal, watched him carefully. "Focus," Vaylon said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "Feel the structure of the metal. Understand it at the atomic level. Then simply ask it to change." Danny took a deep breath. He was a construction worker from Ohio, used to working with his hands, not his mind. But ever since the awakening, he had discovered he could do things that shouldn't be possible. Last week, he had accidentally turned a steel beam into carbon while trying to cut it. Today, he was learning to do it on purpose. He reached out with his mind the way Vaylon had taught him. At first, there was nothing. Then slowly, he began to feel it. The iron atoms arranged in their lattice structure, the traces of carbon and other elements mixed in, the bonds holding everything together. It was beautiful in a way he had never imagined. He pushed gently with his will. The atoms responded, shifting and reorganizing. The steel beam began to shimmer. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, it transformed. Where there had been dull gray metal, now there was a perfect diamond rod, clear and sparkling in the light. Danny staggered back, exhausted. Vaylon caught him before he could fall. "Good," the alien said. "Better than good. You have natural talent, Danny Foster. But remember, power without control is dangerous. You must practice until it becomes as easy as breathing." Across the facility, Amy Chen was having her own breakthrough. She sat in a medical bay, her hands hovering over a dying rabbit. The animal had been injured in an accident, its spine broken. According to normal medicine, it would never walk again. But Amy wasn't using normal medicine. She closed her eyes and let her consciousness sink into the rabbit's body. She could feel the damaged nerves, the broken bones, the pain signals firing through its tiny brain. She understood it all in a way that went beyond her years of veterinary training. She began to heal. Nerves reconnected, cells multiplied and repaired themselves, bones knit back together. The rabbit's pain faded. After 10 minutes, Amy opened her eyes. The rabbit stood up, took a few careful steps, then hopped away as if nothing had ever been wrong. Her instructor, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed with approval. "You have great compassion, Amy Chen. This is good. But be careful. The temptation to heal everyone, to fix everything, can be overwhelming. You must learn your limits or you will burn yourself out." In another wing of the facility, Marcus Johnson was proving to be one of the most powerful resonants anyone had seen. The high school teacher from Georgia could process information faster than any computer. He had learned 15 languages in the past month. He could solve math problems that stumped the world's best scientists. His mind had become a weapon of pure thought, but Marcus was struggling with something the others weren't. He couldn't turn it off. His brain was always working, always thinking, always processing. He couldn't sleep properly. He couldn't enjoy simple things anymore because his mind would immediately analyze and dissect them. He was becoming something more than human, and it scared him. Not everyone was happy about the changes happening to humanity. Outside the training facility, protesters gathered every day. They carried signs saying that the resonants were no longer human, that they were dangerous, that they should be locked away. Some religious groups claimed this was the work of demons. Others said it was a government conspiracy. The worst part was that not everyone had developed abilities. Most humans remained normal, unchanged. This created a divide that grew wider every day. The powered and the powerless. Those who could shape reality and those who could only watch. Peter Grant was one of the resonants who struggled most with control. He was 23 years old, working in his family's grocery store when the awakening happened. He discovered he could affect time itself, speeding things up or slowing them down in small areas. It was an incredible power. It was also terrifying. During a training exercise, Peter made a mistake. He was supposed to slow down the fall of a dropped object, but he panicked, pushed too hard, and created a bubble of accelerated time 50 meters across. Everything inside aged decades and seconds. Paint peeled off walls. Metal rusted and crumbled. 3 other trainees barely escaped, and 1 instructor was caught on the edge of the effect, aging 10 years in an instant. Peter collapsed, horrified at what he had done. Veylan managed to contain and reverse some of the damage, but the incident made headlines around the world. Anti-resonant sentiment exploded. There were calls to shut down the training centers, to lock up anyone with abilities, to force them to take drugs that would suppress their powers. President Mitchell held a press conference trying to calm people down. "These abilities are new to us," she said. "Accidents will happen as we learn. But we cannot give up. We cannot let fear control us. The Confederation is watching, judging whether we can handle this responsibility. If we fail this test, they will cut us off from the rest of the galaxy forever. Is that what we want?" Benjamin Cole was dealing with his own challenges. He had been given access to Confederation databases, thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about the architects and their seeded species. What he discovered changed everything. Late one night, he called Lisa Warren to his lab. She had been developing her own abilities, learning to sense and manipulate electromagnetic fields. Together, they reviewed what Benjamin had found. "The Confederation lied to us," Benjamin said quietly. "Or at least they didn't tell us the whole truth. Humans aren't just another seeded species. We're special. The architects gave other species specific abilities. One race can manipulate matter. Another can heal. A third can process information quickly. But humans got all of it. We can potentially learn any form of probability manipulation. We're the most versatile species the architects ever created." Lisa stared at him. "That's why the Confederation is so scared of us." "Exactly. If we go wrong, we'll be more dangerous than any species before us. But if we get it right, we could become something the galaxy has never seen, something that might finally understand what the architects were trying to achieve." As the months passed, the resonance grew stronger. Danny could now reshape any material he touched. Amy could heal wounds that should be fatal. Marcus had learned to share his mental speed with others, helping entire teams solve problems in minutes that should take years. And slowly, painfully, Peter was learning control over his time manipulation. But even as humanity learned to use their new powers, trouble was coming. Colonel Hayes had been working with Confederation military observers, monitoring deep space. They had detected something at the edge of the solar system. Energy signatures that matched ancient architect technology. Something was approaching Earth, following the signal that Benjamin's experiment had sent out into the galaxy. Hayes called an emergency meeting with President Mitchell and Ambassador Kelvin. In a secure room deep below the training facility, he showed them what his sensors had found. "There are ships out there," he said. "Big ones. Moving faster than anything we've ever seen. They'll be here in less than a month." Kelvin's scales turned dark with fear. "Show me the energy signature," he demanded. Hayes pulled up the data. The alien ambassador stared at it for a long moment, then looked at them with something like terror in his golden eyes. "These are remnant ships," he said. "The survivors of the Devourers. We thought we had destroyed them all 3 million years ago, but some must have escaped, hiding in the dark spaces between stars. And now they've detected your awakening signal. They're coming to find you." President Mitchell felt her blood run cold. "What do they want?" "To recruit you," Kelvin said. "The remnants believe that with human help, they can finally defeat the Confederation and rule the galaxy. They'll offer you power, freedom, anything you want, and if you refuse them, they'll try to destroy you to prevent you from joining us." The year-long trial period was supposed to be humanity's test, but now it looked like the test would come much sooner, and the stakes were higher than anyone had imagined. Humanity would have to choose sides in a war that had been raging for millions of years, and whichever choice they made would determine not just their own fate, but possibly the fate of the entire galaxy. The Confederation Council arrived at Earth's moon in ships that made the original vessels look small. 12 different species, each one a senior member of the galactic government, came to judge whether humanity deserved a place among the stars. The evaluation would take 3 weeks. At the end, they would vote on humanity's future. Amy Chen stood in a white room with no windows. In front of her was a child. Not a human child, but something close. It had 4 arms and purple skin, but its eyes were full of fear and pain. The child was dying from a disease that had no name in any Earth language. "You can save this child," the test administrator said. It was a being made of what looked like living metal. but the technique required will drain your abilities completely. You will never be a resonant again. You will return to being an ordinary human. Choose now." Amy didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and placed her hands on the child's head. She felt her power flow out of her. Every bit of ability she had worked so hard to develop. The child's disease fought back, but Amy was stronger. She pushed harder, giving everything she had. When it was over, the child breathed easily, healthy and whole. Amy collapsed, feeling empty inside. Her connection to the probability fields was gone. She was just a normal person again, a veterinarian from California who had briefly been able to work miracles. The test administrator helped her to her feet. For the first time, its metallic face showed something like emotion. "Few beings would make such a sacrifice," it said quietly. "Your choice will be remembered." In another testing chamber, Danny Foster faced a different challenge. Before him were blueprints and materials for a weapon. Not just any weapon, but something that could destroy an entire city with a single shot. The instructions were clear. He had to build it using his matter manipulation abilities. Then he had to destroy it immediately. It was a test of restraint. Could humans create terrible weapons and then choose not to use them? Danny's hands shook as he began to work. The weapon took shape under his touch, metal flowing like water, components assembling themselves according to his will. It was beautiful in a horrible way. With this device, he could be the most powerful person on Earth. The weapon was complete. For 10 seconds, Danny just stared at it. The power was intoxicating. He could feel how easy it would be to keep it, to use it, to make people listen to him. Then he thought about his family back in Ohio, his niece who wanted to be a teacher, his brother who worked at the factory, all the ordinary people who would suffer if weapons like this existed. Danny reached out and unmade the weapon. It dissolved back into its base materials, harmless metal and plastic scattered on the floor. He left the testing chamber feeling sick to his stomach. He had looked into the heart of what he could become, and it had terrified him. Marcus Johnson's test was different. He was given access to the Confederation's military network. Somewhere in the millions of files was information about a weakness in their defense systems. If humanity found it, they could potentially use it to attack the Confederation. If Marcus reported it instead of keeping it secret, it would prove human trustworthiness. Marcus processed the files at superhuman speed. Within hours, he had found what they wanted him to find. A small flaw in the defensive shields around Confederation space stations, easily exploited if you knew it was there. His teachers at the facility had always told him knowledge was power. Now he understood how dangerous that power could be. He went directly to Ambassador Kelvin and showed him the flaw. Kelvin's scales brightened with relief. "You have made the right choice, Marcus Johnson. Many species would have kept that information, seeing it as leverage or insurance. You chose honesty instead." While the testing continued, Colonel Hayes was coordinating with Confederation military forces to track the approaching remnant fleet. What they discovered was worse than anyone had feared. The ships were massive, each one carrying weapons that could crack a planet in half. And they were moving fast, arriving weeks ahead of schedule. Hayes burst into a council meeting, interrupting the deliberations. "They're here," he said. "The remnants just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They'll reach Earth in less than a day." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some members demanded that Earth be evacuated immediately. Others wanted to bring in military reinforcements. A few suggested simply abandoning the planet and letting the remnants have it. Benjamin Cole had been studying architect technology for months, trying to understand what they had created. Now, as the crisis unfolded, he presented his findings to the council. He stood before beings millions of years older than humanity and told them something they didn't know. "The architects didn't disappear randomly," he said. "I found records in their ruins. They transcended. They evolved beyond physical existence into something higher, something that exists in dimensions we can't even perceive. The abilities they gave us aren't just tools. They're teaching methods, training wheels to help us eventually follow the same path." An elder council member, the crystalline being who had argued against helping humanity, spoke up. "How does this help us now?" "Because the Devourers failed for a reason," Benjamin explained. "They used their powers for conquest and domination. That locked them into the physical universe permanently. They can never transcend. The remnants know this. They've spent 3 million years understanding that they threw away their chance at true evolution. That's why they're so desperate. They want to stop anyone else from achieving what they lost forever. Kelvin's scales pulsed with sudden understanding. And if humanity chooses conquest, you'll lock yourselves into the same trap. Exactly, Benjamin said. This isn't just about whether we can control our powers. It's about what we choose to do with them. Power and conquest, or growth and cooperation. That choice determines whether we have any chance at the transcendence the architects intended. The council fell silent. For the first time, they understood what was really at stake. This wasn't just about humanity or the Confederation. It was about the fundamental question the architects had been asking. Could any species overcome its base nature and evolve into something greater? President Mitchell received word that the remnant fleet was broadcasting a message. It was going out to every human on Earth simultaneously, bypassing all communication systems, speaking directly into minds through probability field manipulation. The message came from Commander Zale, the remnant leader. His voice was powerful and seductive. He showed visions of what humanity could become. Immortal warriors, masters of reality, feared and respected across the galaxy. He promised freedom from the Confederation's rules and restrictions. He offered power without limits. Join us, Zale said. Together we can rule the stars. The Confederation keeps you weak, afraid of your own strength. They will limit you, control you, turn you into servants. We offer you the chance to be gods. The broadcast ended. Around the world, people stood in shock. The offer was tempting. Why should humanity bow to aliens who treated them like children? Why not take the power they had been given and use it however they wanted? The Confederation Council reconvened an emergency session. They were divided. Some argued for immediate quarantine, sealing Earth off from the galaxy to prevent the remnants from recruiting humans. Others insisted that humanity had proven themselves in the tests and deserved support. The vote was deadlocked. That's when news came that changed everything. A group of residents, led by a man named Victor Kane, had announced they were accepting the remnants' offer. Kane was a former software entrepreneur who believed humanity should bow to no one. He had nearly 100 followers, all of them powerful residents who were tired of being tested and judged. We choose freedom, Kane declared in a broadcast of his own. We choose to take what is ours by right. Humanity doesn't need permission from ancient aliens to become great. We will join the remnants, and together we will show the galaxy what we're truly capable of. Humanity stood at a crossroads. The Confederation offered integration and cooperation, but also limits and rules. The remnants offered power and freedom, but also violence and domination. The choice each person made would determine not just their own future, but the future of everyone on Earth. And outside the solar system, Commander Zale's fleet waited for an answer. The remnants had spent 3 million years regretting their choice. Now they wanted to see if humanity would make the same mistake, or if somehow impossibly these young beings might choose differently. The remnant fleet entered Earth's orbit like dark clouds blocking out the sun. Their ships were enormous, built over millions of years, covered in armor fused with organic material through probability manipulation. Commander Zale himself prepared to land, confident that humanity would see reason and join him. President Mitchell stood in the United Nations building, knowing that whatever happened next would define humanity forever. Around the world, people watched and waited. The choice was no longer hers alone to make. Every human had heard Zale's offer. Every resident felt the pull of unlimited power. The decision belonged to all of them. Then something unexpected happened. Peter Grant, the young man who had nearly killed people with his time manipulation, stepped forward. He broadcast a message from the Colorado training facility, his face appearing on every screen on Earth. "My name is Peter Grant," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. 6 months ago, I lost control of my abilities. I age buildings by decades. I almost killed 3 people. It was the worst moment of my life. I wanted to give up, to stop being a resident, to go back to being normal. He paused, gathering his courage, but I didn't give up. I learned. I practiced. I got better. Not because I wanted power, but because I didn't want to hurt anyone ever again. The remnants are offering us the chance to be gods, but I've seen what happens when people think they're gods. They stop caring about others. They stop caring about being human. I choose to stay human, Peter said. I choose the Confederation. Not because they're perfect, but because they're asking us to be better than we are. The remnants are asking us to be worse. I know which choice I can live with. The broadcast ended. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lisa Warren appeared beside Peter. then Danny Foster, Amy Chen, and Marcus Johnson. One by one, hundreds of resonants from around the world joined them, all making the same declaration. They chose growth over power. They chose humanity over godhood. Victor Kane and his followers were shocked. They had expected most resonants to join them. Instead, they found themselves in a small minority. Kane's confidence wavered as he realized he had badly misjudged what humanity wanted. Commander Zale watched from his flagship. The human response surprised him. The Devourers had jumped at the chance for unlimited power. But these humans, these young and supposedly naive beings, were choosing differently. He decided he needed to make his case in person. Zale's shuttle landed at the United Nations Plaza. He emerged in armor that seemed alive, shifting and changing as he moved. The remnant commander was imposing, over 3 meters tall, with weapons built into his very body. He had made himself into a living war machine over millions of years. President Mitchell met him with Benjamin Cole and Colonel Hayes at her side. Around them stood the Confederation Council and human representatives from every nation. This confrontation would be witnessed by the entire galaxy. "You are making a mistake," Zale said. His voice was deep and harsh. "The Confederation will limit you. They will tell you what you can and cannot do with your own abilities. We offer you freedom." "Freedom to do what?" Benjamin asked. "To conquer. To destroy. Is that really freedom, or is it just a different kind of prison?" Zale turned to him. "You understand nothing. We Devourers were the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever seen. We could reshape worlds with a thought. We were truly free. Then why are you here?" Colonel Hayes asked. "If you were so great, why are you trying to recruit us? Why do you need our help?" For the first time, something like doubt crossed Zale's face. Before he could answer, a young voice spoke up. Katie Morris, a 19-year-old college student who had only developed abilities a few weeks ago, stepped forward. "Commander Zale," she said, "can I ask you something? You've spent 3 million years fighting and hiding. In all that time, have you been happy? Have you been free? Or have you just been prisoners of your own anger?" The question hung in the air. Zale stared at this young human who dared to challenge him. He opened his mouth to respond, but found he had no answer. Because Katie was right. The remnants had spent millions of years regretting their choice, trapped by the decision they had made so long ago. They had survived, but they had not lived. That moment of hesitation was all it took. Victor Kane and his followers saw what they would become if they followed the remnants. They saw Zale's doubt, his regret, his hollow existence. Kane realized he had been wrong. The power the remnants offered came with a price too high to pay. "We made a mistake," Kane said quietly, stepping away from the remnant delegation. His followers came with him, returning to the human side. "The remnants don't offer freedom. They offer a dead end." Zale's armor began to glow with barely contained rage. "You refuse us? All of you? Then you leave me no choice. If I cannot have you, neither will the Confederation. I will destroy this planet rather than let you become their pawns." But before he could give the order to fire, something unprecedented happened. Every resonant on Earth felt it at the same moment. A connection, a link between their abilities that had never existed before. Without planning, without coordination, they joined their powers together. Amy Chen, even though she had given up her abilities in the test, felt the connection flow through her again. The probability fields responded to the collective will of millions of humans acting as one. She reached out to Zale, not with violence but with understanding. "Your bodies are damaged," she said, her voice echoing with power. "Millions of years of forced evolution through probability manipulation have corrupted you at the cellular level. But it's not permanent. We can heal you, all of you. But you have to let go of your power long enough to let the healing happen." It was an offer no one had ever made to the remnants, a chance to undo the damage they had done to themselves, a chance to start over. Zale stood frozen, torn between the rage that had sustained him for millions of years and the possibility of redemption. In the end, he could not do it. He could not let go of what he had become, even if it meant remaining forever broken. "No," he said quietly. "We are what we are. We cannot change." But he also could not bring himself to destroy Earth. He had seen something in humanity he had thought lost forever. Hope. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, a species could choose differently than the Devourers had, could achieve what his people had thrown away. "We are leaving," Zale announced. "But know this, humans, there are more of us scattered across the galaxy. Not all will be as merciful as I have been today. You have made enemies, but perhaps you have also proven something that needed proving. The remnant fleet withdrew, vanishing into the dark spaces between stars. Earth was left shaken but intact. The Confederation Council reconvened immediately. The vote was unanimous. Humanity had passed the test. You have shown wisdom beyond your years, Kelvin said to President Mitchell. You faced temptation and chose growth. You were offered power and chose responsibility. The Galactic Confederation welcomes humanity as full members. Your training will continue, but you will do so as equals, not as subjects. The months that followed brought incredible change. Humans began integrating into galactic society. Resonance joined Confederation peacekeeping forces, scientific expeditions, and diplomatic missions. The training centers became permanent institutions. Earth's philosophy, the idea of choosing growth over power, began influencing other species across the galaxy. Benjamin Cole returned to his laboratory, now equipped with technology the architects themselves had built. Lisa Warren worked beside him, her abilities restored by the collective healing that had touched all of Earth during the confrontation with Zale. Together, they were working on the most ambitious project humanity had ever attempted. Do you think it's possible? Lisa asked. Can we really find a way to communicate with the architects in their higher dimension? A year ago, I would have said no, Benjamin replied. But a year ago, I didn't know humans could manipulate reality with their thoughts. I didn't know we were created by beings who transcended physical existence. I've learned not to underestimate what's possible. Across the city, Katie Morris prepared for her first assignment as a Confederation ambassador. The young woman who had asked the question that broke through to Zale was being sent to help integrate another species into galactic society. She looked up at the stars through her window, seeing them not as distant lights but as destinations, as homes to countless beings she would meet and learn from. Danny Foster was teaching matter manipulation to a new class of resonance. Amy Chen had opened a healing center that treated both humans and aliens. Marcus Johnson was working with the Confederation's greatest minds to solve problems that had stumped them for centuries. Peter Grant was helping other resonants learn control, sharing his own failures so they could avoid them. Humanity had passed its first test. The journey ahead would be long and difficult. There would be other challenges, other threats like the remnants waiting in the dark. But for the first time in their history, humans faced the universe not as isolated primitives but as recognized members of a cosmic community. President Mitchell addressed the United Nations one last time before stepping down from office. Her words were broadcast across the galaxy, heard by trillions of beings. We were given power we didn't ask for and weren't ready for, she said. But we chose to grow into it rather than let it define us. That choice, more than a